Paul and his girlfriend Mickey arrive at an isolated lodge to meet his friends. Mickey wonders if she should just go home, so Paul tries to assure her that it's okay. Suddenly, someone screams from upstairs, so Paul heads up and finds Joe and Martha hiding from a spider on the floor. Paul chuckles at his friends for being scared but screams when the spider crawls toward him. Mickey suddenly enters and steps on the spider, killing it. Paul introduces Mickey to his friends, but Martha wonders why he brought a date as if it's a jolly event. She asks him to tell them when they can interrupt his date to scatter their friend's ashes. Hearing this, Mickey apologizes, but Paul assures her that it's fine. In their room, Mickey still thinks her being there is a bad idea, so Paul blames himself. Meanwhile, Martha also blames Paul, insisting that he could have impressed this date on any other day, but Joe is more concerned about cell service not being available. Joe calls from the landline to notify his doctor that he can't make it to their appointment. He suddenly begins coughing, so Martha quickly gives him his medicine. As Joe and Martha head downstairs, they find Paul on top of Mickey, disgusting Martha. Joe just brushes off the moment and asks Paul if he brought pot, and he says no. Martha asks if he brought food, but Paul didn't know he was supposed to. Mickey announces that she brought cupcakes, but Martha ignores her and walks to the door when Russell surprises her. They let him in, along with his wife, Emma. Since Paul and Mickey took the last couple's room, Russell and Emma sleep in separate rooms. As Emma relaxes in her room, relishing being away from her kids, Martha suddenly appears to complain about Paul bringing a date. She thinks it's inappropriate, but Emma is cool with it. Later, Russell notices that Paul's car isn't outside, so Paul shares that a stranger rented it. Paul claims that he received an email about a stranger looking to rent a car for a day in exchange for 200 quids. While waiting, Paul played with his car keys when they suddenly turned into a wad of cash. The next day, the stranger was supposed to return his car but instead sent him a cab to take him to the car's location. The cab dropped him off at an ominous-looking house in the middle of nowhere where he found his car in the barn. Paul casually went inside it and opened the headlights only to find a bloody woman on his windshield. Freaked out, Paul stumbled out of the car and discovered that the woman was still alive. Without removing her first, Paul started driving in panic. Unable to see through all the blood, Paul exited the car and apologetically started wiping the blood, blocking his view. Suddenly, he saw a machete-wielding man, so he rushed back inside and tried to drive away. However, the man started slamming his window until another car crashed into them. When the police showed up, Paul was found, but he didn't figure out what had happened to the murderer or the victim. His car was soon fixed, but he couldn't bring himself to drive it again as he still thought of the woman on his windshield. After the story, Martha berates him for inventing a lame excuse for using Mickey's car instead of his. The group later gathers around for drinks, and Emma asks Mickey if she knows why they've come here. Martha quickly jokes that they gathered to bang, which makes Emma laugh. However, the mood is killed when Mickey reminds them that they're here to scatter the ashes of their friend who died in the lake. Russell, however, jokes that sleeping with them is probably what their friend would have wanted. Paul finds it offensive to talk about their friend that way, but Martha refuses to get emotional in front of a stranger. Mickey apologizes, and Joe assures her that it's alright because their deceased friend had a dark sense of humor. Emma then boldly asks Mickey if she minds how they process their friend's death. When she shakes her head, Emma assures Martha that she can mourn however she wants, much like how she intends to drink too much today. They then toast to having fun and remembering their friend, Jonesy. Before they scatter Jonesy's ashes, they individually say a heartfelt message to him. Emma remembers how Jonesy wasn't afraid to be himself, while Russell jokes that he always thought Jonesy would kill someone, but he ended up killing himself. Still, he laments how it took his death to gather them all. When Joe receives the urn, he gets emotional and hands it to Martha. He asks her to tell them his secret, so Martha reveals that Joe needs a heart transplant, much to everyone's surprise. Once things calm down, Paul scatters Jonesy's ashes, but the wind blows the ashes onto their faces. This makes everyone laugh, and Paul scatters the remaining ashes into the water. Martha then tells the story of Dean, a man who was anxious that his wife, Amanda, was losing interest in their marriage. Amanda did her best to be a good wife, but she was dying on the inside. Hoping to reignite their spark, Dean surprised her with weekend trips and shopping to distract her from the idea of leaving him. One night, Amanda joined Dean for a ghost tour of an abandoned asylum. As they entered, Dean was irritated when Amanda made flirty comments to their tour guide, Zeke. When the tour ended, Zeke gave them the hoodoo oil to put on their door to prevent the ghosts from following them back into their house. However, Amanda forgot to use it, so she woke up in the middle of the night and found Dean in the bathroom. From there, Dean stared at her with eyes as dark as night. As Amanda walked back, she stepped on an earring but stifled her cry out of fear. Instead, she returned to bed despite her husband looking at her intensely. The following day, Amanda found Dean in bed. Thinking it was a dream, she got up but found the earring still in her foot. During breakfast, she asked Dean if he remembered anything from last night, but he didn't. Amanda suddenly recalled the hoodoo oil and realized that she didn't apply it on the door, but Dean thought it was just a gimmick. That next night, Amanda woke up again and Dean was missing. She got out of bed and grabbed a hairbrush for protection. As she opened the door, Dean suddenly appeared, making Amanda scream. He threw the hairbrush away, took Amanda to the bed, and gave her the finest lovemaking she had in years. The next morning, Dean had no memory of the previous night. Despite this, Amanda never brought up the nightly encounters. Instead, she relished the intense lovemaking every night. Because of this, the spark in their marriage returned even though Dean didn't know why. Still, he accepted it even though his soul was slowly dying inside. Joe comments that it's awful to have a weak and needy husband. Martha asks what he meant and Mickey tries de-escalating the situation, but Martha ultimately walks out. Back at the lodge, Russell, Joe, and Mickey prepare the food. During this, Russell looks for the oil but can't find it. In a panic, he starts opening shelves until Mickey finds it. Russell hugs and kisses her, which she finds odd. After a while, the couples dance to the music. Mickey wishes to join but can't because Paul is sleeping. Martha rebukes that she can't because Paul isn't her husband. Furious, Mickey drops the speaker and asks why Martha hates her. Martha claims she just doesn't want her around because it's a personal event between close friends. Waking him up, Mickey demands for Paul to defend her, but Martha tells her that even Paul doesn't want her there. Joe then takes Martha outside to calm her down, leaving everyone uncomfortable. Mickey complains to Emma that Martha never gives her a chance. She feels betrayed since Paul doesn't defend her, so she grabs the bottle opener with a knife and tries to cut her hand. Emma and Paul take the knife away, so Mickey storms out. In their room, Mickey rants to Paul about Martha, while Martha rambles about her to Joe outside. To help her relax, Paul starts making love to Mickey instead. After she calms down, Joe asks Martha whether she still loves him or if she only pities him because he's unwell. Martha assures Joe that she'll always love him. Meanwhile, Mickey and Paul cuddle when he suddenly blurts out Martha's name. Pissed, Mickey gets dressed and leaves the lodge. Having seen her leave, the others grow worried, especially when Paul merely goes to the kitchen to drink instead of chasing after her. At dinner, Paul quickly loses his appetite, so Russell begins his story. He tells the story of a zombie apocalypse survivor who resembled Kiefer Sutherland. The man walked into a store but found a zombie there. He remained silent, but his stomach grumbled and he farted, alerting the zombie. The man chose to fight, but the zombie surprised and grabbed him. Desperately, the man shoved the zombie, and it got stabbed by a protruding shelf peg. For good measure, he beat the zombie with a fire extinguisher. The victory made him feel alive, but more zombies arrived, so he escaped through the back door. Another zombie attacked him when a woman appeared and made noise to attract the zombies away. This allowed the man to escape, but he realized that he wasn't the sort of man to flee. Instead, he returned and slayed the zombies with the woman. Later, the man told the woman that he was a member of a group living in a high-security compound. When they arrived at the compound, the woman asked how they could get out since the door was locked from the outside. The man promised to explain once inside, but instead he trapped her to feed the girl to the man's zombie daughter. Everyone is appalled by the story, so Emma takes the plates away to break the ice. Suddenly, she drops the plates as she sees someone pass by the window. Mickey then appears outside the door, screaming. Paul lets her in and she reveals that someone dragged her into the woods. Russell attempts to call the police, but the landline is broken. They decide to leave, only to find that their vehicles have disappeared. Infuriated, Emma challenges the maniac to fight, but Mickey hushes her, fearing that she'll anger the man. The group plots to get help, but Joe notices the car tracks. They follow the tracks, discovering that their cars were pushed into the lake. Russell suspects that Mickey set this up, which Paul disagrees with. The tension triggers Joe's illness, which makes them all retreat to the lodge. Later, Russell and Emma prepare to head to the nearby pub to call for help. After they leave, the others hear something inside the lodge, so Martha takes a pot and heads upstairs while Paul checks downstairs. In the bathroom, Martha notices a human figure in the tub. Afraid, she slowly approaches and smashes it with the pot. Paul arrives and asks Martha why she's hitting his coat. Realizing it wasn't a person, Martha demands why he left it there. However, Paul claims that he didn't. Suddenly, Joe enters the room and they all scream in surprise. After calming down, Martha decides to check on Emma and Russell while Joe and Paul attempt to repair the phone lines, but to no avail. Before leaving, Martha asks Mickey why she seems unconcerned about being attacked, seeing that she's just preparing the cupcakes. Mickey claims she's afraid but took a downer to calm herself. Meanwhile, Joe shares with Paul how he thinks Mickey regrets coming to their reunion. However, Paul says she invited herself and reveals that he was supposed to go fishing with Jonesy the weekend before he died. He canceled his trip because he was with a woman that day. He then asks Joe how it feels to be waiting for a heart transplant. Joe says it's like a dream where he's trapped in a cage inside a hospital basement with a mad doctor. Instead of the operation, however, the doctor is just watching a band play. Joe ripped his chest open to show his failing heart, but the doctor and the band just played with the new heart like a ball. Outside, Martha searches for Emma and Russell when she hears something behind her. Suddenly, someone touches her shoulder, so she swiftly swings her flashlight. In the bedroom, Joe continues that in the dream, he reached out to a curtain next to him where he heard a screaming woman. Before he continues, they hear the others return. As Russell rests after Martha hit him, Joe whispers to Paul that behind the curtain he saw his head sewn onto Martha's body. Mickey then offers everyone the cupcake she made. When Paul hands one to Martha, he sees the apparition of Martha's body with Joe's hand. When things turn back to normal, Martha just takes the plate but doesn't eat the cupcake. Everyone enjoys the cupcakes, but Martha notices that Mickey isn't eating the frosting. She excuses that it's too sweet for her. Emma then plots to head to the nearest house to call for help the next day. She heads to the kitchen, where Martha asks whether she trusts Mickey. Emma points out that Mickey is making an effort, so Martha should reciprocate by eating the cupcake. This triggers Martha, so she provocatively eats the cupcake in front of everyone. Afterward, she goes to the bathroom to pee. To fill the silence, Emma recounts her pregnancy as a nightmare, saying it's like having another person's misery grow within her body. Meanwhile, Martha notices a spider in the bathroom and becomes strangely dizzy. She walks back to the living room with her pants down, so Emma helps and takes her to the couch. Suddenly, the lights go out. Emma searches for a candle but gets distracted by Mickey's screams. Emma yells at her, finally letting out how Mickey wedged herself into a private event and continued being a cliché with all her screaming. The lights come back on and Mickey appears behind Emma, scaring her, so she collapses to the couch. Everyone becomes paralyzed as Mickey begins her story. She recounts how there was a couple named Russell and Emma who had 3 children and no social life. Another couple, Joe and Martha, had no children and figured it didn't matter since Joe was ill. Then there was Paul, who got plenty of girls. He would talk about ladies with his friend Jonesy, who was faithful and committed to him. Jonesy loved Paul and would do anything for him to love him back. Jonesy asked Paul to fish at his family's lodge. He prepared everything to make it perfect, but Paul called to cancel the trip due to food poisoning. However, Jonesy heard Martha's voice in the background, revealing that Paul was having an affair with her. He invited Ludo to the lodge, but when they arrived, he killed Ludo and threw his body into the lake. Jonesy then used Ludo's passport to travel to Germany for a gender reassignment surgery, resulting in Jonesy becoming Mickey. Mickey then uses curtains to tie Paul's hand, stressing that Paul isn't Joe's friend because he's having an affair with his wife. Suddenly, Martha tries reaching for the knife on the table, but Mickey grabs it first and accidentally throws it into Paul's knee. She then ties everyone's hands, accusing Emma and Russell of knowing about Paul and Martha's relationship but never told Joe. Mickey then sets Joe free out of pity. Martha stands and apologizes to her husband, but Joe leaves. After he's gone, Mickey pulls the knife from Paul's knee and warns that whoever makes noise will be stabbed. When Paul tries to walk, Mickey stabs him repeatedly in the leg. The others react to this, so Mickey also stabs them. Eventually, everyone keeps quiet, so Mickey stops and walks out. With their dire situation, Emma and Russell think about their children. Hoping to see them again, Emma plots to escape, but Mickey appears with a bottle of oil and pours it over them. Paul then tries to persuade Mickey to free them, even proposing to her. However, Mickey doesn't believe him and pours oil all over him. She then takes flammable fluid from the cabinet and sprays it all over the friends. The window suddenly shatters and a rock hits Mickey's hand. Joe climbs from the window but falls. He quickly rises and grabs the knife, but Mickey also goes for it. The two fight for it until Mickey takes the knife and attempts to stab Martha. However, Joe jumps at her and pins her to the floor, ending with him stabbing her in the chest. Finally, the friends head out to the woods to get help. During this, Martha and Paul apologize to Joe, but Emma hurries them up. While the others are resting, Paul notices Mickey heading to them. They hurry away, but she suddenly vanishes. A van arrives and the driver takes them in. They try to explain the situation, but Mickey reappears and lights a lighter. As she tosses it at the van, the friends scream.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.